This podcast is going to go over some of the details of our implementation project we'll be doing this semester. Basically, up to this point, I've been trying to teach you things you know to be competent, productive administrators. And now I'm going to give you the opportunity to prove that you are competent and productive by giving you some tasks to do and some guidance on how to perform those tasks and hoping you can take care of it. I do not intend to make podcasts of how to do every one of these things. I've made config guides that have the steps necessary. So hopefully you'll be able to follow those to take care of things. I've also made some sample files available. So I'm just going to quickly go through what we'll be configuring and some other helpful things you might need to know to make it all work. So this project, there's two parts. The first part is we will be configuring the services. And then for part two, we're going to be connecting to a sample server and checking it for compliance with the security standard. So I have that security standard, and that server is pretty much not compliant with most things. So you're going to go through the standard and look up the settings and make sure what they're set to, and then you're going to write a report that has a report of the non-compliant items, and make recommendations of changes that should be made to make the server compliant. So basically, if you determine that the server is not set to boot to run level 3, that's our first item on our security standard, right? I don't know where the security standard is. I think I closed it. But anyway, the first item I think is it should be run level 3. So if you determine it's not at run level 3, then your finding will be the server is set to boot into run level 5, if that's true, and then your recommendation would be to modify the server config in etc and init tab or wherever it is to have the server boot to run level 3. So that report will be part 2. Part 1, first thing we want to do is make our server a DNS server. I have created a sample file for that. So here's a sample file. The config guide will install a couple packages. There's some sample files in Desire to Learn. If we look here, here's a sample file named d-config. That is a TGZ file, a tar gzip file, so you need to download that and get that up to your server using SCP probably, and then you can extract that with tar xvzf and then the file name. There's two files in there. One is the named.conf file. It needs to go into etc. You need to modify it to change some things. Mainly, I think you just need to change your from my domain where it says RBE0000 to be your domain name, and there is also a sample zone file which is something like RBE0000.lab.zone. You'll need to rename that to match your domain name, and then you'll need to copy it into the proper location var named data. And you'll need to change the IP addresses to match your IP addresses, and you'll need to change the domain name to match your domain name within the file. At that point, you should be able to start the named service named start, and hopefully it will work. If not, chances are you most likely have errors in your config files. At that point, you can use NSLOOKUP to query your server to see if things worked. So I have this command on here. It says NSLOOKUP www.bunchofx's.lab, and then this IP address at the end. It should be the IP address of your server. So basically, you're telling your server to ask itself the question. So I'll do www.rbe1234.lab, and it says, hey, there's your server. So that's good. So that proves that your server is working for your domain, and then we want to also look up something for some other domain. In the example, I tell you to look up for my domain, but that's going to work because I'm on my server. So you want to look up, let's see if this works. You want to look up your domain. Oh, I didn't put the server. You want to look up for your domain name information, and then the second lookup will be for my domain name information. The way it's set up is if we look at the named.conf, that's not working right now. I don't know why. I'm not real worried about it. I might be on the wrong server. I want to see if I'm on the right server. No, I'm on the right server. So if we look at the named.conf, there is a forwarder This is the DNS server that it will ask questions it does not know the answer to. So this is a DNS server I have configured to do some things. Down here is where we have the zone files, right? Zone files. So you'll have one of those for your zone, and we'll have the zone files in var named data. So there we have the zone file, rbe.lab.zone as our zone file. So anytime you make any changes to the, I don't know why I did that. Anytime you make any changes to the zone files, you need to restart named. Second thing we're going to do is implement a sample LAMP web app. LAMP stands for Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP, and I've essentially given you a tiny bit of PHP code and some instructions on how to configure the database for that to work. So here's the steps to do that. This bold stuff are actual commands you'll type into the MySQL, into the command line to get in and configure MySQL. We need to edit this file to point to the proper location, so we need to change. Right now, the sample file you're going to download is pointing to some endpoint that doesn't really exist anymore. So you'll need to get rid of 2 slashes in front of localhost, and then you'll need to put 2 slashes at the beginning of the next line. Those 2 slashes are comments in PHP. And there's also a stray underscore character somewhere that needs to be removed. That stray underscore is in between address and book. If we look up here, we set the database name to address book, but in the file, there's an underscore in the middle. So that is that. Once it is done, you should be able to access it. You should be able to access it by typing in your IP address and then put address book.php at the end. And there's your address book. It should work. You should be able to add contacts. It does not do any error checking to see if you're actually putting a email address or anything, so you can put pretty much whatever you want in there. So that's that. So you might be saying, hey, Rich, didn't we configure DNS? Should the DNS name work for that? Well, maybe. And no, it didn't. And the reason it didn't is very complicated. So let's pay attention to what I'm saying right now, because this is very important. When our system is up and running, we are using whatever is in resolve.conf as the DNS server. So here in resolve.conf, I have my name server set to the Comcast name servers because I'm on the Comcast network. I'm already connected to the VPN. So once I'm connected to the VPN, I'm actually going to change this to point to my name server. Right? I'm connected to my name server now. So now, in theory, if I put that in there, now I'm connected to my name server. Here, let's open a new page. So now I'm connected to my name server. So now it works by domain name. So that's good, right? The thing to remember, if you disconnect from the VPN and then you try to reconnect, the DNS server is pointing to a DNS server that exists only on the VPN. So you will not be able to connect. So once you disconnect, you should probably do here, let me go ahead and demonstrate that. So now if I disconnect, right, I'm not connected to the VPN anymore. If I look at my resolve.conf file, right, it's still pointing to my name server. So if I try to connect to the VPN, it's not going to work because I can't get the name for CNT serve. I can't get the IP address for CNT serve. So what I always do in this situation, if this would ever die, what I do is just for fun. See, it says cannot resolve. God, die. Is that not the right PID? Oh, it killed the entire shell. So hopefully it's gone. Yeah, it's gone. So what I generally do I got the somebody here delivering propane, so my dogs are barking at him. So I didn't want to do that yet. So what I generally do is service, network, restart, and that kind of refreshes everything. That gets you back with the right thing in the resolve.conf. So now you should be able to connect. All right, so now you should be able to connect because you have the proper thing in resolve.conf. But now that I've reconnected, if I try to go to my page by domain name again, wait, how did that work? Was that cached? I guess the DNS name might have been cached. So anyway, the point of this is you're going to have to do some DNS modifications on your client machine in order to get this to work reliably. So that's how we'll want to test your browser by your web server and address book by hitting it with a browser. Another thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need, well, I'll skip that for now. Yeah. So if you have issues getting your DNS server working properly, I have installed a Windows, actually my lab assistant has installed a Windows VM that you can rdesktop to. You need to install rdesktop on the Linux VM we have, yum install rdesktop. And then you can use it to connect to the Windows machine. You want to log in as other user, student, and the password is my awesome password. We've been using Rich is the best with all the special characters. It's in the file if you need that. I can never get it right. That's like the worst password ever. TH3. All right, let me go find what the password is because I'm such a jerk. There it is. This is the password right here. Let's see if I can actually type it this time. Hey, I got in that time. Awesome. So then once you get in here, this server is already configured to point to the correct DNS and stuff. So you can come in here and you can do http:// in the domain name, hit enter, and you should get the web page. I will warn you, if you just type the name without HTTP, it might do something weird, like yeah, it's not doing it right now. But before, I was just typing in the domain name, and it was actually saying, doing a Google search and saying, did you really want to go to this website that doesn't really exist? And the answer is yes. So if you don't want to bother with the DNS modifications on your virtual machine, you can remote desktop into this Windows box. I will say, be careful. I'm not sure how many people can log in at once. I think it might be one. So if somebody else is on, I'm not sure what's going to happen if you try to log on. I'll just say, let's be kind. I think you should get an error message if you try to connect when somebody else is logged in. It says somebody else is logged in. You should probably not kick them off. So that is DNS, the LAMP web app. The third thing we're going to do is configure our server for SSL. So by default, the Apache did not install SSL. If we look at our SSL config guide, if you can find it, did I not have a copy of that open? Right here. If you look at our SSL config guide, it has some words in here that tell you how SSL works a little bit. But then we need to install mod SSL and then generate some keys. So once we get everything, once we get it all working, we should be able to go to our domain name via HTTPS and not get a certificate warning. So I'm connected. I didn't get a certificate warning. I have a certificate. It was signed by my certificate authority, and I didn't get a warning. So that's what we want. The first time you go to the page, you're going to get a certificate warning. So what we're going to do is we're going to follow the commands in the SSL document, to generate a key. Then it will generate a certificate signing request, and then we will submit that certificate signing request to my certificate authority, which is ca.rbe1234, 0000.lab/certserve, cert with a C, certserve. Connect to that, and you'll do request a certificate, and then you'll do advanced certificate request, and then you will paste the CSR into that field. So what does the CSR look like? Let's see if I still have one around. Actually, I have one on my server. So I have one server.csr. This is what the CSR looks like. So you'll just copy this whole thing, and you'll paste it into the box over here, and then you'll submit it. And then you'll tell me I need to sign your request, and it will take me however long it takes me to log in and sign your request. If you send it at 3 in the morning, chances are it won't get signed at 3 in the morning. I'll sign it, and then you'll come back to the website and download your certificate and then install it on your server following the steps in the config guide. After you do that, sound ferocious, don't they? After you do that, you'll come back here, you'll download the server, the server certificate, you will configure your server to use it. When you connect, you will still get an error because you do not trust my certificate authority, right? If you look at your server, at your browser, there's a certificates area where it says view certificates, right? If you go down here, my certificate is in my browser because I've already trusted it, but you will not. So what you're going to want to do to cause that trust is you're going to want to go to the main CertServe page and do download CA certificate and then click on install CA certificate. Mine says it's already installed. You'll get a pop-up window that gives you choices. You want to select, trust this certificate for websites or whatever, and then hit install. So that's that. Let's see what else we're supposed to do in the project. If I can find the file. All right, then we're going to finish up some security standard items we had. We had an item that said we should sync to a time source. We need to install NTP date, and we need to run it. So yum install NTP date, and then we can run it NTP date time.nist.gov, and that's going to update with the time server in theory. So mine's not working right now. It worked yesterday. I'll figure that out later. And it says that we want to have cron run it every hour. I put a document in D2L to show you how to set a cron job. Here's a cron job that'll do it. Hope you paused it or back up to see what the cron job looks like, or else you can figure it out yourself. So apparently, cron can be used to run jobs on a regular basis. So that cron job will do that. This says, in security standard item 3, implement remote logging to the log server at this IP address, and then you modify etc syslogd rsyslogd.conf. So with rsyslog.conf, I need to fix that apparently. So somewhere in this file you configure an IP address to tell it where to send logs to. Once you have configured that, I'll actually go over here to my log server once I check it, and I'll put in a query that says, hey, whatever, and then I'll see some log entries from your server to prove that you've successfully implemented that. See what else we got. Standard 12 says you need to install updates, so I want you to use yum to install updates and reboot your server before I check it. If I do check update and there are a bunch of updates out there, you'll lose points for that. So that is that. The final thing you need to do is you need to make sure that for all these services we installed, they start at the proper run levels. So you need to use check config to make named and MySQL start for run levels 3, 4, and 5. So when we reboot your server, it comes back up correctly. Also, you probably need to change your DNS server settings so that your server uses itself for DNS. So that would be in the file etc sysconfig network scripts ifconfig-eth0. That file has a setting for DNS server. You need to set that to be yourself so that you're using yourself for DNS. So that's it for the project. So the early part of this podcast went over expectations of the project and what you need to do, things you need to make work, demonstrated some things. This part is going to talk about grading. There are 2 due dates. It's my effort to try to get you to work a little more quickly and not wait till the last minute. So 8/4 is the first due date. 8/7 is the second due date. 8/7 is the last day of class. So I'll grade it after that. Make sure it's done by then. There's also 2 potential scoring criteria. 1, you completed everything with minimal assistance. The second one, you completed everything with some assistance. So the first part of this class, I gave you very specific instructions and podcast. Sorry, the first part of the administration portion, I pretty much showed you exactly how to do things. Well, that's not realistic. You need to be able to do some things, figure things out for yourself to be a good Linux administrator. So in this case, I've given you different types of instructions. I've given you install guides or config guides or whatever you want to call them. So you need to be able to follow that written documentation to make your thing work. So if you need lots of help, you will not be eligible for full credit. Does that mean if you're like, hey, this one thing's not working and I don't think I'm doing it right, if I check it and it's something you shouldn't have known or it's not a big deal, you won't automatically lose points for that. But if you're like, hey, my DNS server is not working and I can't figure it out, and I get on your server to check it out, and you don't have any of the config files copied where they need to be, and you don't have the service running, stuff like that, that's the kind of stuff that will lose you points. So I'm not saying don't ask me questions. I am saying if you ask me too many or the wrong types of questions, it could cause you to lose points on the assignment. So first due date's Monday, second due date's like Thursday. There's 3 days different. Hopefully you all get them done by the 4th. Interesting thing that might interest you, I will actually be out of town the week of the, I don't know, what week was that? The week of August 4th, I will be out of town. So I'm leaving on Saturday, and I'll be back the next Sunday. I will have my laptops with me. I will be providing assistance. I will be reading email. However, I will not be providing assistance in reading email instantaneously. So I'll check my email periodically throughout the day and provide assistance when I can. But I will be out of town on vacation. So it would be in your best interest for you to work on this as much as possible before I go out of town, so that I will be able to help you more rapidly, probably, than I will be when I'm on vacation. So that's that. If anybody has any questions, let me know, and we'll finish this semester off, and hopefully everybody will pass.